Yeah. So what it said in the document that I got from the museum is some location related to these stones, and the location is JANOA. So in my search for JANOA in Puerto Rico, thus far I have not been able to locate anywhere the use of JANOA for any specific place, you know. And so I am trying to see if in ancient times, you know, because JANOA has some indigenous like undertone to it, like you see JANOA, canoa, you know, like there's some sort of similarity. But I've seen in my dictionaries that I have, you know, I've been looking at all these dictionaries, see if I come across the term. So I didn't. So I went on the internet and plugged the name in. So it said, you know, JANOA is, you know, like it marks one of the northern boundaries of the tribe of HEBREA, where his area was located. But you know, like this is basically the importance of this concept for me in archaeological terms is that it's like the most direct reference to a location for the stones, because it's not Puerto Rico, you know, it's JANOA, Puerto Rico. And I need to understand if this was a specific place in Puerto Rico, or what does it mean. And I need to go to the primary source to see if Alphonse Pinard put this, or he derived it from the priest, or what.
Okay, can I
Yeah.
offer an idea of thought? If we stick with the lost tribes theory, right? If we go based on that concept, could it be that that the stones are indicating from JANOA to Puerto Rico, that the tribes had migrated from JANOA and landed in Puerto Rico?
Well,
Would that
you
would
know,
that be it, or?
nah, I don't know. I couldn't say that. I need to delve into this because I know the implications that it has. You know, for, you know, like this is biblical. You know, like this is not like, in order to pronounce something like this, I need to be like, boom, like deep into this research. Like I can, you know, say, okay, so this is what happened. This is, you know, because archaeology is material based, is you know, based on concrete evidence, and for me to build, you know, and if eventually, let me be completely clear, if eventually this research leads to the lost tribes of Israel, okay, perfect. You know, I don't know where it's going to lead me, you know, but I'm open to it. And that's what I think that, you know, and things are, you know, like.
Can I ask you a question, Professor?
Yeah.
Okay. Based on your research, are there any other writings of this kind in the island?
Okay, well, you know, recently, that's a very important question. I've been trying to track different lines of evidence that haven't been looked in detail. Like, for instance, I'm trying to go back to rock art representations in caves and beaches, and one of the important things is that many of the, for instance, the areas in the coast are completely covered up with sand. But recently, in a beach, which you must know of from your surfing days, no, Los Tubos in Manatí, like a big swell came in and cleaned the beach, you know, and like below 6 feet of sand, a stone appeared, yeah, like with writing, you know, writing that is similar to the writing that is found in northwestern Africa and the Canary Islands, you know, and I think that as we begin opening our minds into that possibility, we're going to begin seeing that some things that we didn't see before we were not even considering them. And so one of the things, and I'll show you artifacts here, that is interesting, is that I think that there is more archaeological evidence that I am trying to pile that up now. Not only looking at the stones, because the stones archaeologically lack something that is of primary importance, which is archaeological context. And archaeologists will always raise a doubt into, okay, so, well, but you don't have any archaeological evidence, we don't know how to date them, blah, blah, blah. Say, okay, so we cannot recreate the archaeological context. That's impossible, but what we can do in order to limit the implications of that is to find artifacts that have been found in clear archaeological context that have elements that are analogous to those of the stones. And that's something that I am working on now.
And does that finding has a specific name? They were found in the Tuamanati?
Well, no, actually this is new. This is like from several months ago. Yeah, this is...
So they haven't even put it out there yet.
No, I mentioned them. I gave a paper in a congress, in the Congress of Caribbean Archaeology, this last summer in the island of St. Martin. I did a paper on the stones, and I presented them, but the finding was not made by me, was made by a colleague. Her name is Isabel Rivera, and she said, well, this is weird, let me call Reniel, because he's looking at the weird stuff. And so she called me, and I went like, what? This is because the interesting thing is that you have this stone with this scripture, and then you have in the same level, the same geologic level, indigenous drawings, so it's all within the same strata, geologic strata.
It was a big stone?
No, it was a stone like this big. Okay, I can show it to you. It was a stone like this big, and with some... We haven't published about it yet. We are going to, because it's really, really interesting, and it will open a lot of eyes, because that has nothing to do with uncontextualized artifacts. It has to do with writing, because for me it's clear. You have some symbols that are not indigenous. This is not indigenous.
This stone is under the control. Somebody has this stone?
No, the stone is there, buried.
It's there?
It's buried. The stone is impossible to see. You go to the beach, you can walk back and forth, north and south, you will not see it. It's below 6 feet of sand.
So,
But when a swell comes, it cleans everything. And that's only when you see it.
okay, but you call it Isabel and your...
Yeah. We have a GPS point of it and everything. No. Definitely.
I'm gonna keep in contact with you, Professor, because I would like to really know more about this.
Yeah. No, I'll show you a picture. It's
okay.
it's... And
Are you in your studies, right? Are you familiar with the concept that there was actually people here before the Taínos arrived and stuff like that? And if I say people, some people even go as far as said there was a species of giants that was living here. That they found giant fossils and bones and things of that nature throughout the Americas.
Well, I've seen that.
That.
I am familiar with the notion, but it's really disputed evidence archaeologically. I've seen some of the stuff that has been presented from archaeological terms, and it's for me, it's not convincing. No, for me, it's not convincing. For me, there have been many montages of giants, and then they have been determined to be Corel Draw. So not I know that in Puerto Rico there were people at least by 4000 BC. And that these people were bringing agriculture. They were, they're usually called the archaic.
Now, also in your research, have you found that there was a level of understanding between the different islands that these indigenous people lived on? Like they did communicate with each other and had active
That has been my main line of research.
Okay, so
How has the sea served to unite people?
so the notion that there was like thousands of different dialects and the people didn't understand each other between these different lands, different lands I'm saying like between specifically like between Puerto Rico and Venezuela and Cuba, like and the Caribe. Is that because this is some of the stuff that conquistadors were writing and things of that nature concerning our people. Is that true based on your research? Or
No, man. Like
find it-
people were communicating in
and there was
respective.
civilization, right.
People were communicating. There were some. It seems to have been some forms of, like it's called lingua franca. Some main form of communications, but there was a plural context in terms of language. But people, it doesn't matter if you speak this and I speak that. We communicate, anyways. This has been basically the main topic of my research. That has been that. That's why I have a map of the Caribbean, and I have a map of the whole Caribbean, because I see the sea as a positive space. And so the sea is like an avenue, because usually the sea was seen as a barrier, and I see it the other way around. We're ocean people, so I know how currents sometimes work, and I know if I want to go there, I know that this way is not the fastest way. I know that I can have to look at the ocean and see, okay, so I go there and I go there. Yeah, exactly. And so I think that if you multiply that by 1,000,000, you'll get to the sense what these people saw in the ocean, because these people moved in the ocean. They depended on that to live. We don't know nothing about it.
And I'm sorry, but I got.
No, aside from that, en la tua manatí, are there any other findings that you said are in some kind of way related to, to the stones, the Padre Nazario?
Well, I am researching some, and I'll have to get back on you on those, because I want to make sure. I don't want to say anything that then I come back and say, oh, damn. Like,
Yeah, because before we were speaking with Señor Rosario, and he mentioned
Who?
that,
Who?
Alexis Rosario.
Cales,
Alexis
Morales, Cales,
And he mentioned that in the Río Macana, en la playa Guayanilla, en la desembocadura, there was a sumidero, and the ingeniero Mac Jordan, he mentioned that he found some stones which, in his opinion, were very similar to the carvings that the stones of the Padre Nazario. Have you heard
I would
about
not. Well, I heard it through him,
that? Okay. So you have heard that before?
from him,
Okay.
from Alexis. Yeah, and I would love to see that.
Okay.
I would love to see that. I would love to go to that sinkhole and see, what can be found. Yeah. Well, if that is the case, then that's the evidence that but I haven't seen it. He said to me about Cueva Mampuche or Mampancha or something like that. He mentioned some names. Mapapancha, exactly. He mentioned me some things that I think are worth definitely researching. Yeah. But I haven't myself been there yet. I went through Guayanilla. I researched, I went to see where the possible house of the priest was. I found that the priest had bought a house, and that the house stored the artifacts. And, so I've been more into the documentary and the stone evidence and the archaeological evidence. But eventually I want to move there and see, what can be found.
Now this question may be outside of the realm that you do your primary research, but like from your studies, what's your understanding on the fact that there's not much remnants of Taino blood today. You know, some people postulate that all the Tainos were killed off and there is no remnant of them now, and then some people say there's actually a much larger percentage of the population of Puerto Ricans today have Taino blood or ancestry. What's your notion on that, man?
Well, anthropologically, I think that the notion of the Taino extinction is completely absurd.
Right.
It's completely absurd. You know, anybody that says that hasn't come to Utuado and gone to the really remote areas where people could have, you know, taken refuge or lived freely much later after the Spaniards arrived. You know, it doesn't make any sense to me. Anthropological sense, you know, that people are simply, you know, there for the other ones to capture them, you know, doesn't make any sense, you know. And so I think that there was indeed indigenous people living in different parts of the island until much later, and that we are basically that, you know, we are the result of our African and our indigenous and our European ancestry. And so, yeah, but it doesn't make sense to me to say that the indigenous people were killed and completely doesn't, for me, you know, I teach in Utuado, I moved in these places and I see the faces of people. And much as I see our African roots, you know, I see our indigenous roots, even in phenotypic terms, in terms of the faces of the people, their eyes, their, you know. But this is more than that, you know, it's culture. And it's, you know, so you can take my DNA, and my DNA can have no indigenous, it's my ancestry still, you know. I don't need to prove it biologically. It's not necessary for me.
No difference.
No, it makes no difference, you know. I am African too, and so what? It's my ancestry. I don't have to be black, you know.
Right.
You know, I think you know, we're very black.
Yes.
You know, we're very black. So this is, you know.
Okay, so I got another question for you, Professor. Okay, what would you say? You know, if you were, I know you are very academic and very serious in your work, but if you were to you know, hypothesize, what would you say, or what would you, you know, speculate that the stones said?
Oh.
Your own personal.
You know, if you want to share that with us, because being that there were many 800 stones, they probably must have said something very important for the Indians to keep them together and for them to carve them. So, so you know, I wonder what would they have said, what would them have said for them to keep them, you know, for such a long time.
Yeah. Well, you know, that I don't have a clue. I can tell you what Barry Fell said. He said that some of the words that were inscribed mentioned important economic crops like mamey, you know, stuff like that. I wouldn't think that, you know. I think that they would have maybe some, you know, if they indeed are, you know, like artifacts from indigenous times that are related to long distance relationships with peoples, you know, would have more ritual importance, maybe chants, maybe some oraciones, you know.
Some loss of the society.
Maybe so, you know, something deeper, you know, than saying maíz, you know, like, you know.
Why would we have that?
Huh?
Why would we, you know, go to carve stone, something that was, you know, very common?
Very common, yeah. I would think that this is a very important information, you know. It would have, but also it's not public information.
Right.
It's not information for everybody. It's information for a select group of people that had access to that, you know. And so you know, because based on the limits in terms of numbers of the amount of stones that are present, and the fact that this is not the type of writing is not widespread in the sites, seems to show that this is really confined information, and that not everybody had access to it.
So you're saying that even within the Taino society, this was only accessed by certain, let's say caciques or the elders
Yeah.
of the communities.
Yeah, by a select group of people.